Hello and welcome to Blah Blah Comics, Blah Blah Curse Words. I'm Derek.
I'm Colby.
And we talk comics sometimes. And as we promised last week, we will be doing our X-Stravaganza.
Yeah.
We're talking about our favorite X-Men, our favorite X-creators, our favorite X-runs.
Yes. Everything X-Men, all X-Men today, because we've talked about it a lot and we've hinted a lot. I think X-Men was basically both of our gateways to superheroes for the most part.
Absolutely. I think we both mentioned how the X-Men cartoon played a huge effect on that. Well, for me, it was the 90s X-Men cartoon. I think yours was Evolution, wasn't it?
Yes, actually, I was going to bring that question up anyway, how we got introduced to it. When I was really young, me and my cousin watched the X-Men animated series, and I loved that and went back to it. But what really got me, honestly, was X-Men Evolution. That was coming out when I was, I can't remember how old, but when I was young enough for it to really hit me.
Right. See, the 90s X-Men cartoon came out when I was just hitting my prepubescent years, so the metaphor of mutation for puberty really hit dead on for me. And then, again, you're much younger than me, and I think Evolution was doing the same thing for you at about the same relative time frame.
Yes, the only sad thing with Evolution is it got canceled before it got to finish its first big apocalypse story. And X-Men Evolution ends on the biggest cliffhanger ever and never gets to go anywhere because it ends with Professor X seeing, because he was around Apocalypse, seeing all these possibly futures, and it shows clips of the Phoenix Force, shows clips of all these big things to come, and then it didn't get another season.
Well, Wolverine and the X-Men had a very similar problem because it ended on the cliffhanger of the future that Xavier was in had changed to the Age of Apocalypse, and had Season 2 gone ahead, they had character designs and new characters to be introduced into the Age of Apocalypse, and were really adapting the Age of Apocalypse as a dark alternate future for the X-Men.
That's even sadder for me, though, because Wolverine and X-Men had a lot of the same talents from Evolution. And
yes, exactly. It was the best of both worlds.
Yeah, it's that weird, is it a spiritual successor, or is it a straight-up successor? Because enough time has passed, maybe this is their future, and it's never said, and then neither of them got a chance to really live. As is a weird... As a side note, but a weird problem with a bunch of superhero shows today. No one has an answer for it, but they all seem to suffer this thing where they get a cult following and get decent ratings, but all get canceled for some reason. Usually,
money related. I know for a fact that Wolverine and the X-Men was just, the budget was too much for it. Spectacular Spider-Man, I think, like you said, had very much a cult following, but I don't think it ever had enough of a online presence or anything to really justify the cost of it. The Avengers vs. Mighty Heroes cartoon, which is by far the best thing the Avengers have ever been involved in, got cut after 2 seasons to make way for Avengers Assembled, which was much more of a movie-influenced Avengers show. They really wanted to try to cross-merchandise and cross-market better not wonderful results.
Yeah, we had Green Lantern and Beware the Batman and Young Justice.
Young Justice got cut because girls don't buy action figures, quote unquote. That's actually a literal quote. Anyway, back to X-Men. One thing I wanted to mention was we actually were planning to do this podcast because the initial release date for Uncanny X-Men number 600 was supposed to be this week. We were actually supposed to get the final issue of Bendis' Uncanny X-Men this week, and we wanted to do something to celebrate. That issue was announced this week that it was being delayed until October. But instead of delaying our celebratory podcast until October, we decided to go ahead and do it anyway.
Yeah, there's the X-Men comics come out this week. We don't need to wait. We'll just celebrate anyway.
Exactly. So, do you want to go ahead and jump into the lists?
We may as well. Like you said, we have our these are our favorite lists. We've been doing the best lists. These are back to our favorites because those are funner and easier.
Exactly. And honestly, I feel like instead of going across the entire dimensional space of comics throughout time, when you get down to just a specific team like the X-Men, favorite lists and best of lists are actually going to be relatively similar.
Yes and no, but yes. I think for the most part, yes. And also, when it comes to X-Men, there are so many characters and so many storylines to go off of that you could argue almost anyone who's had a decent time or run in X-Men could be the best character if you're basing it off of the story that you love.
Absolutely. And yeah, then actually I think that's actually a really good argument towards my favorite character, who, if you've ever listened to this podcast, you already know who my number one is. But he's definitely a character who's had some terrible things happen to him throughout his many-year history on the team. A lot of editorial fiat that has helped break his character in certain ways, and yet I love him anyway. And I think the good moments outweigh the bads. But anyway, with that, Colby, I ask you, sir, who is your number 10?
My number 10, one of the original X-Men, one of the founding people, one of the top ones. Someone who, over his career, went from being one of the best good guys to one of the worst bad guys, or one of the best bad guys, but straight up evil always. Archangel is my number 10.
Nice.
Someone who, I mean, since the 90s has been, like I said, it was this weird level of I didn't know whether to put Angel or Archangel. I'm putting Archangel knowing Angel did kind of naturally turn Archangel, then kind of Angel and Archangel. I'll exclude what happened after Uncanny X-Force where he lost all his memory, because that is basically a new character. But, yeah. Anyway, Archangel specifically mainly for the Uncanny X-Force run Remender did, and because his connections as a Horseman.
I think that's a pretty good pick. I would kind of argue that if you're leaving off the post Age of, not Age of Apocalypse, but post Uncanny X-Force dememoried Angel, you could also make the case that Archangel really was born as a character in X Factor number 21, where, it is still Warren Worthington III. He definitely became a new person, much in the same way that Revanish and Psylocke are, two entirely different characters, and that post-Siege Perilous, Betsy Braddock became an entirely different character, and you could make the argument that that would be, that they are two separate distinct personalities. So if you're putting Archangel, I would definitely say you're looking at a character who was introduced in X Factor number 21, and who, quote-unquote, died as a villain in the pages of Uncanny X-Force number 18, 19?
Yeah. 18, I think, 18 or 19.
Yeah, that was the end of the Dark Angel saga.
Yes.
So, during that run, he was a character who experienced a lot of strife. He got his angel wings back, but never really managed to lose the blue tone. Until he did, but then it was brought back out in the post Messiah Complex X-Force title, and a lot of different changes, a lot of different skills and ideas brought to the different team dynamics. I like it. Good choice.
Yeah, who's your number 10?
My number 10, my actual thing that I wrote was, if I could just put the entire cast of Generation X as my number 10, I would, because that was a book that, again, was very informative on my formative years. Generation X was launched shortly after the X-Men cartoon. It was just when I was getting into comics. The Phalanx Covenant actually happened about a year after I was getting into X-Men comics, so two of the biggest influences on me as a comics reader were Age of Apocalypse and the Phalanx Covenant, which led, of course, into Generation X. Since I can't put the entire team of Generation X on my number 10, I went with Husk.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, Sam Guthrie's sister. I love her powers. I love her personality. I love how she was driven. She was very much trying to escape her brother Shadow, which is funny because a lot of Sam Guthrie's arc during that same time was when he graduated from X-Force to X-Men and felt like he was trying to get out of the X-Men shadow and establish his own dynasty, whether or not that was what Fabian Nicieza intended. But she really tries to be her own woman. I'm saddened by some of the choices that have recently been made with her character. She kind of lost her mind for a while.
Yeah.
Joined up with a team of the new Hellfire Club, worked at their school for a bit, had a minor psychic break. But for most of her run, she's been studious, intelligent, driven. She's smart. She's fun. She's capable. She kind of more or less became the leader of Generation X for a bit, even though I think that title was supposedly bequeathed to M. And I don't know. Every time she's on the page, I really enjoy what happens. Her hooking up with Angel during the Chuck Austin run, notwithstanding.
I think all these characters, like, once again, with the X-Men being the X-Men, I hate to say it, but for every really, really good story, there's an equally really bad story.
Absolutely, and that's going to come from having such a large cast and having such a wide range of creative teams taking on all these different characters.
Yeah, well, speaking of someone that has had some amazing stories and some god-awful treatment, my number 9 is Jean Grey. someone
Nicely done, sir.
I get some hate for loving her. I put her on my greatest comics characters of all time list because I feel at the end of the day, her best stories are better than almost anybody's. Now, her worst stories are also worse than almost anybody's.
Right.
But I'll kind of forget that. But you talk about character development, character changing. Jean Grey has literally been through everything imaginable, life, death, including multiple times.
Right.
And it's another character where, like a lot of X-Men, where she's gone so many transformations, you can argue she's multiple characters, but I think Jean Grey does the best of, even when she is Phoenix Force or going into Dark Phoenix, what keeps her Jean Grey is she always kind of has that bit of hope and that bit of who she is normally.
Right.
And a character that has survived through a ton, and I think she, even when she's gone from the X-Men, she's still an integral part of X-Men. I mean, there's a reason why, even in comics today, she's still, well, of course with the all-new X-Men, but even for the long period where there was no Jean Grey, she was still important for the stories. And even when she's still dead, they still had to find a way to basically introduce a Jean Grey to do certain stories.
Yeah, two things I want to bring up.
Yeah.
One, my favorite description of Jean Grey comes from Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men run, actually. I think it's in the first or second issue when Wolverine is giving Cyclops shit about hooking up with Emma Frost, and he object blasts Wolverine out of his room, and they go out in the courtyard and have a fight. I think this may actually be the first issue.
It may
and
be.
Emma says something to the tune of, thousands of dollars of cosmetic surgery, and lists all of her amazing qualities, and she still rates below a corpse. And the other thing I wanted to say was, I wanted to ask you, have you read X-Men Season 1?
No, actually, I have not.
Dude, you really should. As a Jean Grey fan, you really need to seek it out. It's Dennis Hopeless and Jamie McKelvey, and it's very much a modern retelling of the first 6 or 8 issues of the original Stanley Jack Kirby Uncanny X-Men from Jean's point of view. She's actually the protagonist and the central character of that graphic novel, and it really puts her in the spotlight of this team dynamic as it's forming, and it's really quite brilliant. It's probably the best young Jean Grey story you're going to find.
Oh, well, see, I see that book everywhere, and I've not gotten it because of that reason, because, as we all know, people have a tendency to make really boring origin or first stories. With, there are a few rare exceptions, but I will have to get that now, because I see that used at a lot of places, too, for cheap.
Absolutely, yeah. I really think it's something you would dig, sir.
Awesome.
As a Jean Grey fan, especially, I think it's something that you could really get into.
Nice. I'll have to get that then.
Awesome. My number 9 is also a young female character. I'm afraid, even growing up in the era I grew up in, I could never get down with Jubilee. The closest I came was I really thought she provided a good foil on Generation X, but she was never a favorite character of mine. However, I have to say that role was actually filled spectacularly by Armor over in Astonishing X-Men.
Oh, very nice.
I thought Hisako was a great young female Kitty Pryde replacement character for Wolverine to kind of start mentoring. I like the way they developed her relationship. Post Whedon, her character again has gone through some interesting changes. I did actually kind of like the idea that she had to deal with the death of her family at the same time as her powers burgeoning greatly. Her armor form is built from the souls of her ancestors, and she actually, shortly after Warren Ellis's Astonishing X-Men run ended, her family was killed, so she gets her armor becomes giant. She actually gets like a 30-foot tall armor power set that she has to learn to deal with at the same time she's grieving the loss of her family, which I thought was a great bit of character development. She's kind of the face, I feel, of the new young X-Men, and I think she was a great addition to the X-teams for the early 21st century.
Oh, definitely. She's always been someone that has been there in a lot of stories and been a really fun part. Like, even when her little involvement in Wolverine and the X-Men and a few other things, she just was always a cool character. And what I have read of her, I've liked.
And I mentioned to you before the show that I actually had a tie for characters that I've been going back and forth on. Yeah. The other character I seriously considered for that spot was Blindfold, just because I loved her powers and the way she talked and the way her character was handled. She was just a lot of fun. But I realized that she's really had not much character development beyond she speaks in broken sentences and has no eyes and can kind of see the future. And she's a fun character. I like watching her. But as far as character growth and development for favorites, I really had to end up tipping it to Armor.
Yeah, I would agree just for the fact when you said blindfold, all I could think of was basically what you generalized there. I was like, oh yeah, the blind dude. But, yeah. Well, my number 8 is actually, I think would be a lot of people's number ones, and it's a character I do love, but since we're doing our favorites, my number 8 is Wolverine.
Yeah, that would actually be a number of people's number ones. I'm not going to lie, Wolverine is not on my list, but please continue.
I mean, Wolverine, I think it's almost obvious at this point. He is someone that has had generally some of the best X-Men stories, even just from how he was introduced to how he became. And for a long time, where there wasn't actually anything known about him, he was a genuinely mysterious character. Now, by today, we know basically every single step he's taken in some way. And somehow he still pulls off the mysterious gruff guy. And we pointed out a million times, and everyone has too, that he is the biggest lone wolf to be on every single team imaginable. I don't think there's an X team he hasn't made at least a cameo appearance in.
Right.
He's, when people think of X-Men, he is either the character or one of the characters they immediately go to. He's the most recognizable. And he can be, when written well, he's just a fun, out there character.
Absolutely. I think the best Wolverine stories, much in the same way that the better Batman stories that are not, seminal Frank Miller runs, there are the crazier ones where you just throw Wolverine into the weirdest shit imaginable and just watch how he handles it. Same thing with Judge Dredd, actually. All three of them are characters who you can put them in literally any situation and you know exactly how that character would react. Exactly. You can throw Wolverine in space fighting Galactus and he's going to do the same thing he would do in a bar pub crawl in Madripoor.
Exactly, and it's someone that you point out perfect right there is why he works so well. It's just, if you know the core of that character and can write a decent Wolverine dialogue, you can throw him into any fun situation and have at least a panel or two that people will remember or someone will love.
Right.
And yeah, that's why he is my number 8.
My number 8 actually is probably also a goodly number of people's number ones, especially people who were 12 or 13 when she was introduced. Also, someone who's well related to Wolverine and had a lot of her character growth developed by Wolverine. The original young female sidekick, Kitty Pryde.
Very nice, very nice.
And a lot of what I just said is the reason I think that I would put her in my number 8 category. She's had a tremendous amount of development. She's incredibly important to the X franchise as far as queer and LGBTQ subtext. She's very much a character who has changed and grown as the series that she's been on have changed and grown around her. She's been allowed to grow up, which is something very few characters outside of Dick Grayson have been, granted the option to do. And she's just a wonderful, smart, beautiful character. Her entire characterization is something so many people can either crush on and or aspire to. She came a little too early for me to get the full brunt of Kitty Pryde love. By the time I got into X-Men, she was well established on Excalibur, which is a book I wasn't really following. In fact, when I was growing up, I missed the Claremont Davis run. I only recently picked it up in the last couple of years. So I never really got the hardcore Kitty love that so many people have, which is why she's not further up on my list. But I do understand the fulfilled potential of the character and always enjoy seeing her. I will say I adore her role in All New X-Men as Professor Kitty. I thought that was a great natural extension of her characterization.
Oh, well, we talked about X-Men Evolution and the animated series. In X-Men Evolution, she was one of the central characters through almost all of it. So she's had almost a breath of life from that. And like you said, in All New X-Men, even Wolverine the X-Men, and through several comics, like she keeps on getting reintroduced, but she has the privilege of being reintroduced at a higher point, so she definitely does continue to grow and evolve as a character.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Anything left for her you'd like to say?
No, I really think like I say, I wish I had that deep core love for her that so many do. I don't, but I do have the respect and appreciation for her as a character. So that is why she is my number 8.
Awesome. Well, my number 7, I can't think of a cool segue to go from Kitty Pryde. They've met plenty of times as friends, as foes. But my number 7 is Magneto.
Really? Yeah. Fascinating, sir.
Magneto, someone who, once again, when you get to that level of the core X-Men characters, it's hard to give reasons why. I think the reasons are pretty obvious. But Magneto in the world of comics, is someone who straddles a villain, hero line better than almost anyone else, and someone who has the best reasons for both. He's the only character I can think of off the top of my head that he's a convincing villain because he has the best backstory for a villain ever, and he's such a good villain that even at his worst, most atrocious moments, you go back to his reason, you're like, well, he's kind of right in a weird way. And that's hard to pull off. That's so hard to pull off. I think this is a weird comic to go to, but there's an A+X issue where Max Bemis wrote it. It's the only reason I got it. And it's Magneto and Superior Spider-Man. And he's going off about how basically all these villains are just dumb and have no reason, have no real core belief to what they do. And Superior Spider-Man goes on like, well, maybe they've just been through some, really hard times. Maybe they don't know what to do. Or like, how would you know what's hard is? And he's like, I've lived through the Holocaust. I've done names we've done this. Superior Spider-Man is going, oh.
Yeah, my dad was kind of mean to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's like, it's so true that Magneto, when it comes down to it, he doesn't have just the basic, he experienced some tragedy. He lived through the tragedy.
Yeah, exactly.
And he had survived and thrived and became bigger and stronger because of it. And some of the X-Men films captured extremely well about that character, honestly.
Absolutely. That I 100% agree with. The X-Men films wouldn't have had the strength and pathos that they did if you didn't have an actor like Ian McKellen who could really tap into the horror of what something... I mean, a horror that, let's face it, none of us will ever truly fathom the scope of.
Yes, and then have someone that his relationship with Professor X being the coolest, one of the coolest, best friend, worst friend, enemy dichotomy, almost to the Batman and Joker level of either the best friends in the world, or they love each other, or they hate each other to the core. And once again, it's a line they both straddle throughout the entire most runs. They just straddle that perfect.
Absolutely, that is dude. I am impressed. That is well put.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, I don't have. Well, I have one former villain on my list, but that is not my next one. My next one is actually. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about Magneto?
I don't think so. It's hard to go past Holocaust.
Yeah, it's true. My number 7 is actually one of the 5 originals. He's been there through thick and thin. He's had some amazingly terrible things happen to him, and what I love about the Beast is how much he has taken so much of the horrible shit he's been through in stride. He got mutated into a gray, feral, almost Wolverine-like character. That mutation went further into the bouncing blue-eyed beast we know today. Again, speaking of 70s subtext that really couldn't be touched on, he very much got into pot in the 1970s and decided, you know what, fuck it, this is who I am, let's have some fun. Also a potentially gay character who was, shortly after Steve Englehart, rewritten to be more of just a swinger, 70s swinger in general. You can tell I really love reading into the crazy subtext of some of these 70s writers. But then, into the 80s, depowered, then repowered, lost his intellect, found it again, mutated into a giant cat, dated Trish Tilby, potentially broke the timeline of the Marvel Universe, bringing the all-new X-Men forward. Yeah. One of the smartest men on the planet, and genuinely quite possibly one of the nicest. His character is always that, especially, like I said, post Steve Englehart, someone who really does try to see the best in everyone and the best in every situation. One of my favorite arcs involving the character actually was when he got kind of super depressed because he was the first X-Man to turn 30. That was early on in Scott Lobdell's run, and it was a really nice, quiet character moment for him that he, of course, managed to bounce out of and get back to his more bubbly, charming personality.
Yes, he's once again, X-Men have always captured well, and he's a great example of they find such a great way to connect very personal issues with their mutations that are so obviously just cloaked behind their powers. But he's someone that he's so relatable to so many people because of who he is. And normally he's fine with that, and sometimes he has to straight up deal with that and remember that, oh yeah, I'm this weird creature.
Right, but the way he deals with it is, I am this weird creature, but I'm also, kind of like Tony Stark's the billionaire genius playboy philanthropist. He's also got ridiculous amount of doctorates.
Yeah.
He's in the scientific and brain level of a Reed Richards or a Tony Stark, and he's just a genuinely nice dude. I mean, Hank is one of the few comics characters you can point at and be like, yeah, he got laid.
Yeah.
It's not that he's met the love of his life. He got laid. Him and Daredevil, they're the ones who've been like, yeah, he's fucked. He's gotten around.
Yeah, I would actually probably say about most of the X-Men with the other X-Men.
Yeah, but I mean, even outside of that, Hank's the one that goes to the clubs and is like, "Can I buy you a drink?
Yeah.
You want to go back to my place? Yes, I am. Furry all over. Would you like to see?" He's not ashamed of it. He'll play with it. He'll have fun with it.
That's actually some of my favorite X-Men ones are the Wolverine and Beast relationship.
Yes. Yeah.
Speaking of going out, those are the two I think of all time. Just they'll cut to a random bar and it's Beast and Wolverine at some random bar in Alaska or something.
Right. If it's not Beast, it's Nightcrawler. And again, that kind of plays to that same dichotomy.
Very well. My number 6 is a character I've talked about a ton, and someone who's dealt with the Beast Age of Apocalypse version quite a bit. My number 6 is Nathan Gray, better known as X-Man.
Hooray! I knew he was going to be on your list.
A character that I grew up fascinated with for some reason. When it came to 3 or 4 characters in particular, and I'll get to them in a little bit, but Nathan Gray was always just a cool idea to me of Age of Apocalypse. You have a ton of X-Men, different series, but the one comic that's basically the one-man team of X-Men, literally entitled to. Someone who is, a point of power that got almost too ridiculous in how powerful he could be.
Well, it was supposed to kill him before he hit his 20s.
Yeah.
That is how powerful he was.
Exactly, and he's someone that's... we don't have time to go into the weird backstory level of how he came from Cyclops and Jean Grey, or how he came... A lot of Age of Apocalypse characters, it's better not to even ask who they really are, how they are.
If I can interject just 1 second, one of my absolute favorite panels in the entirety of X-Men history, again, a Scott Lobdell panel, was when Joseph, who himself was a underage clone of Magneto, was asking... I'm pretty sure he was asking Cyclops and Jean Grey, so what's the deal with Cable and X-Man anyway? Next panel, cut to caption, 2 hours later. I don't think I understand any of this.
Yeah, that's pretty much... He's a character that even talking about, I love him, but he's the only character in X-Men history I can think of where it's like you have to read some to even get a little bit of who he is and what he's about. I'll say if you like Cable and wanted a snarkier... If you like Cable, but like, man, I wish Cable was more like Spider-Man, that's kind of the closest you'll get.
That's a really good description. I'll also say this. As a 14-year-old in, 1994, 1995, X-Man had the best costume.
Yes,
I loved his look. He had an amazing visual.
He does, and I wish he's someone... they brought him back a little bit in, what was it, New Mutants he was in for a while?
Yeah, he was brought back in the Dark X-Men miniseries. That was post the Warren Ellis Mutant Messiah arc that they did with him.
And he hasn't really done much I can think of in a while.
Yeah, I think the only person in the world who could actually probably get a decent X-Men miniseries out would probably be yourself, sir.
Well, I hope... Yeah, I have an X-Force idea that will hopefully one day will happen. But until then, people have to wait and probably deal with the X-Men as a side character until... Well, no, Battle World's coming. I'm sure Age of Apocalypse will probably be involved somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty sure it is in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, he's a character. If you want to see 90s X-Men to its strangest and craziest, X-Man would be my first go-to for anybody.
Absolutely. My number 6 is a pretty offbeat choice itself. Again, just a character. I love her. I love her more than her dad. I think she's a more interesting character than her dad. Teresa O'Rourke, Siren. Same power set as Banshee, but I think they did more cool stuff with her. I think she's much more fun. had a relationship with an actual factual relationship with Deadpool that I thought was really fascinating and interesting. I love her look. I love what they did with her in the Peter David X Factor series, the X Factor Investigation series. I don't know, just everything about her just fascinates me. I find her a fascinating character. She's another one where if she's on the cover, I'll pick up the book to see what's going on with her these days.
Yeah, see, that's a lot of characters on this list. I feel is that way for me because I hate to say it, we're overexposed to X-Men in a lot of ways, even though they've cut titles down severely from what they were. Mm-hmm. There are so many of them that if you see the right character on the right cover, you're like, oh hell yeah, that's like when Uncanny Avengers did their weird Apocalypse Twins with Thor thing. I was like, I'll pick it up, why not?
Right.
And I feel that's the way. What has she done in a while? I can't think of her.
I think that post the end of the original or the X Factor Investigations run, she's kind of just slipped by the sidelines. And I know that everybody got a good denouement off for those from that last issue, but I haven't actually read the last issue. I'm trying to do a reread on Marvel Unlimited through it, so I'm a bit behind. But ever since that, she kind of disappeared. She's not really been in the book. She didn't show up in the current all-new X Factor. She hasn't been in any of the Bendis X-Men tie-ins that I've read. She's kind of fallen off the map, and I'm hoping we see a resurgence of her post-Battle World, post-Secret Wars.
Nice. I'm curious to see what happens to all these characters pretty soon.
Yes.
Well, I literally can't think of any connection at all between these two, so I'm just going. My number 5 is Sabretooth.
Really? Again, fascinating.
Yeah, so I will. This goes back to, it's our favorite list, so I don't have to really explain too much, but the character that first, just his design caught my eye in every form was Sabretooth, and someone that I've always looked at as Wolverine, this very unhinged character, but it's somewhat like, hey, you know what, he's got somewhat control over it, he's trying to be better. To me, Sabretooth is always a guy he's Wolverine, but if Wolverine didn't want to get better, for the majority of how he's looked at.
Right.
And I've just always really thought his look was cool. He being just this very, very powerful, badass character. And one of my favorite storylines, again, going back to Uncanny X-Force with their final story arc, which Sabretooth was just kind of like this background character. Like, oh, he's just a henchman again, and he turns out to be like someone behind the entire plot, trying to kill Wolverine. I was like, oh, snap, that's right. It proved again that people forget, he can actually plan shit out pretty well.
Yeah. Charles Soule actually wanted Sabretooth to be behind the Death of Wolverine arc, actually, and was told no because he'd already been so integral to Paul Cornell's big Wolverine story preceding the Death of Wolverine that they felt like it would be overkill to use him as the mastermind twice. But that was something that was considered.
Okay.
So he's actually a very smart character. He's just so feral.
Yeah.
That it often overshadows the high level of criminal intelligence that the man possesses.
Exactly, and I would love to see him used more. Like the first X-Men film, I thought he was used decently, and I would love to see him more because we last saw him in the films in Origins, and it was this weird, like very, very odd take on the character.
I loved him in Wolverine Origins. I really did. I thought Liev Schreiber did a tremendous job. The visual wasn't great, but I thought they actually nailed the character's intelligence matched with his viciousness.
I will say that's true. I think that's what I meant more so in Origins by anything was if he would have had, I hate to say it, but a similar look to the first film where he came off as this just brooding, like some vicious feral creature, but didn't have the intelligence to back it up. That's why it's interesting. That's what a lot of people forget about him. Why I think some people throw him to the side because they look at him just as henchman that's very powerful, strong, can do all the Wolverine stuff, but isn't as cool. I think he's cooler just because he is, like you said, unhinged on a ton of power and a ton of stuff, and he has these incredible plans. He just gets thrown to the side too much.
That is, again, a fascinating choice, my friend, and one that I can't argue with because you defended it so eloquently.
Thank you.
My number 5, and I'd like to point out that, as of this one, we are in our top 5.
Yes. Also
someone that I really fell in love with initially because of the visual design of the character, and it's a visual design that's grown and changed, and oh god, I can't think of a good pun, but there's a good pun in the idea that he's a character whose visual has changed throughout the years. It's Iceman. Bobby Drake, who so often has had to have other people show him the potential of his powers before he really learned what he was capable of as an Omega level mutant. I love, again, a character who's goofy and fun, but who packs a tremendous punch. Someone who has an excellent visual design, especially, once again, I thought his Age of Apocalypse design was astonishingly kick-ass.
Can I say, all these characters we've named happen to be some of the most evil, heartless bastards in Age of Apocalypse?
Yeah. But at least, even though they were evil, heartless bastards, Sabretooth and Iceman were both good guys.
Yeah, they were some of the coolest, though.
Yes.
That pun is not intended, but damn it. But yeah, continue on. I had to point that out. That just caught my eye.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I'm totally 100% behind the idea that Iceman is gay and has been suppressing his homosexual identity. Considering the wonderful late 90s Maguire Lobdell story where it turns out it was revealed just how bigoted towards mutants Bobby's father was, I can't imagine if he told his dad on top of that he was gay. So I can only imagine the pressure he was under as a mutant to suppress that side of his identity and how that's going to come out over the next few issues when he's confronted with it by young Jean and young Iceman from the all-new X-Men story. But even before that particular bit of character development, I've always really loved Bobby. His powers are amazingly visual. His look is very signature. His personality and character is always fun. Almost a Human Torch level of can be a grown-up when he wants to, but often chooses not to. And the fact that he's also smart enough to, more often than not, be the man behind the X-Men's finances. I mean, yeah, Warren throws money at it, but he uses his accountant's degree to keep the school afloat. It's not just a money sink. He actually understands what's going on behind that.
No, I completely agree. He's a character that... There's a reason why he's been in the X-Men a staple in the franchise since its inception.
Right, and even when he wasn't an X-Man, he was a member of the Champions. He joined the New Defenders. He's been a fixture of the Marvel Universe since 1963.
Yeah, and thankfully, finally in Days of Future Past, we finally got to see Iceman in full ice form.
Yes.
So we've
with a beard, which was awesome.
We've got to see that character God, I can't think of the word now. Go to the screen very successfully too, in my opinion.
Yes.
Although we won't consider his role in 3.
Nobody does.
Yes, I think that movie doesn't exist anymore. I think that and Origins is officially gone from history.
Yes, they have been knocked out of canon, out of continuity, and out of our thought processes.
Well, speaking of knocking things out of continuity, knocking things out of canon, just knocking everything about, my number 4 is Sinister. Mr. Sinister, of course.
So many villains on your list, dude.
Yeah, I like them. But Mr. Sinister being possibly the most devious of villains in the entire X-Men universe. Someone who literally does not give a shit about anyone's well-being in any format. Someone who's just looking to exceed himself. Someone who does it better than anybody, I think. And someone who is ridiculously powerful.
Okay, question.
Yes.
And I'm not meaning this to be mean or anything. I'm genuinely curious. Since he is such a favorite character of yours, and you clearly have read a lot and know a lot about him, what are Mr. Sinister's powers?
You want me to narrow it down? Because
just give me a once-over.
Oh my god, you bastard! No, genetic powers-wise, god damn it. I know. He's like, can you?
No, that's why I was asking. One of my favorite panels, again, from comics very early on, one of the very first comics I bought, was X-Men number 23, which opens Cyclops just, fucking blasting away. Big old Andy Kubert splash page of Cyclops lifting his sunglasses from a crouched position, just blasting optic blast, and then you turn the page, and Sinister has shapeshifted his body around where Scott was blasting, and just kind of giggling at him for even trying to hurt him, which we all know that Scott's blasts hurt Mr. Sinister for some reason, but if he can just completely shapeshift around them, why has he ever been hit by a blast in the first place?
No.
His powers are as much a mystery as the character himself.
Exactly. I think when I'm thinking of characters, like it's his character, who he is. I think of. But yeah, powers wise, that's why I left it ridiculously powerful because he has had. Oh God, I can't even think of every power he's had. Honestly, I don't think there's a power he can't have. Like crap. Okay, I went to Wikipedia to see what his official powers are. His abilities are Master Manipulator and Planner, Superhuman Strength and Durability, Genius Level Intellect, Regenerative Healing Factor, Telepathy, Molecular Manipulation, Shapeshifting, Virtual Immunity to Injury, Energy Projection via Telekinesis, Teleportation via Tesseract, Headquarters, Prolonged Longevity. So...
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, there you go. In other words, he can basically do whatever he wants.
He can do whatever the plot calls for.
Yes, whatever he wants to. What I always found interesting about him was he's that powerful, and his focus on just genetically modifying already genetically modified beings. His just Dr. Moreau level of seeing how far he can push the mutant body and mutant physique to the next level. I mean, the reason why him and Apocalypse make such great, good bad frenemies. And plus, like I said, I just love a good devious villain that recognizes he's a villain in a lot of ways, and doesn't care. Like the X-Men come to this point where so many people, the X-Men's a very blurry line of who's good, who's bad. Everyone has a good reason, everyone has a bad reason. Sinister doesn't care, and that's what I think what I like about him. He doesn't really care about his reasons or their reasons. He just wants to get the job done.
Yeah, if I were to put him on a D&D chart, I'd say he was neutral evil.
Yeah.
He's not evil for the sake of being evil. He just legitimately does not give a shit.
Yeah. And he's someone that... I think I like him so much because he's someone that, the moment he shows up, shit's about to get crazy.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I'll give you that.
He's almost the Watcher level of, if you see Sinister in an X book, you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And that would be why he's my number 4.
Coincidentally, my number 4 is also a former villainous turned actually legit X-Man. It was a gradual change, and it was actually fairly organic, I feel, and it again has ties to Generation X. My number 4 is Emma Frost, the White Queen.
Ooh, very, very nice. Almost made my list. She was like number 12.
Nice. Yeah. I love Emma. I love everything they've done with her. Like I said, she made a fantastic villainess. She is one of the villains who kicked off the Dark Phoenix saga, one of the greatest comic stories of all time. Mm-hmm. But her attempt to basically mock Xavier by creating the Hellions and creating her own Massachusetts Academy as kind of a perverse flip side coin of the Xavier Institute or the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters actually gave her a point of empathy. She lost her Hellions. Her students died. They were massacred. And she has ever since tried to make up for not being able to save them by continually trying to teach and save the next generation of mutants. She did it first with Generation X. Well, she actually even brought the new mutants into her Massachusetts Academy while she had the Hellions. But her first real attempt at redemption was Generation X, then, teaching on Genosha while Magneto was in charge, and then, of course, taking over as a teacher at the Xavier Institute and Wolverine and the X-Men and even Astonishing X-Men. So her character arc has been quite simply beautiful. She's tried to be better than who she is. And she's just always written hilariously snarky and fun. She's a great character to read on the page, and she makes a great foil for Cyclops. She actually works as Cyclops' girlfriend, someone who helped him legitimately pick up the pieces of both Jean and Madeline in a way that no character really could. Yeah. There's a reason, and this is something I'll get to when I get to my number 1 character, there's a reason Scott Summers is deeply attractive to telepaths, and I think part of it is that he never has anything to hide, and Emma, who has so much to hide, would find something incredibly attractive about that. So she works as a foil for his character and as a character in her own right. She's never been Cyclops' girlfriend, Emma Frost. She's Emma Frost. Yeah. Cyclops is her boyfriend.
Yeah, very good way to put it. Well, someone who else I would say arguably more connected to Cyclops than Emma Frost. And also an extremely powerful telepath just happens to have a technovirus get in the way. Number 3 is Cable.
I am so surprised he's not your number 1. I'm legitimately surprised.
He's got 2 in front of him. There are 2 more, but I haven't hit it. Cable, I have a lot of Cable love. He's someone that I think with most people, his original, as dumb as it may look, his costumes attract the eye of every child, every boy kid that wants the Terminator-esque look going on. Mm-hmm. The line in Cable and X-Force, like issue 2, where he's talking to Forge and he says something about how dumb he looks, and he's like, and you know how bad that means coming from me. But someone who, even though he's had a lot of horrible stories, I think we're finally getting to that point where people are starting to realize how to write him better, and there have been some really kind of cool elements of his character. The entire stuff, even though it's not great, the ideas of what he did for Hope, and like basically fighting so much to protect what he believes to be, the savior of the mutant race, literally just doing the Terminator storyline, but to a crazy level of jumping through time with this little kid and training her to be his ultimate badass.
But also trying to be a father.
Yeah, someone who is so messed in the head and realizing he's messed up in the head and being like, you know what? I need to be better for her. And once again, trying his best to be better. And Cable and the X-Force, a series that isn't that old, but I loved how it dealt with him. Someone who basically telling Hope, saying, I don't want you near my X-Force because I don't want you to be. I want you to have something normal. I want you to not be me. I know you want to be me, but no one should be me.
Right. For a long time, I've kind of fell on the Cable hate train as well, but I have to agree with you on that point, absolutely. His conscious decision to be a father to Hope. He could have taken the Batman-Robin relationship of, good soldier, and kept her at an arm's length distance, and he didn't. He absolutely took on the role of father figure, something that he never really had, considering his father had to throw him in 2,000 years in the future. Yeah. Because of said techno-organic virus. You could talk about the Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix miniseries where they kind of jumped in the future and helped raise him for 12 years, but that was still a dystopian future. He made a conscious decision to be something that he didn't understand in order to be better for her, and I think that's an absolutely tremendous character credit to him and to your fandom of him, sir.
Exactly. It's something a lot of people overlook because, he's had all the dumb, just straight up Terminator. Oh, he's come from the future to kill this person from the past. And that's how he was used for, forever. And he's just had sprinkles here and there of him growing as a person. And it's taken so long to get there. But I think he's getting to a point now where he's become almost as interesting as his look, which took way too long. But that's what you get when you have Rob Liefeld and a lot of his help and a lot of 90s Marvel stuff.
Right. Yeah, he unfortunately is one of the poster children for 90s excess, and it's taken him a long time to shake that stigma. But I think as your generation has come up and can start to point to, much like my generation is like, Gambit's not that bad a character, guys. Yeah. Your generation is kind of like, well, Cable's the same way. Cable's not that bad a character. He's actually got his good points. So I applaud your decision. I think that's really great. He did not make my top 10, but I think you're absolutely right. He's a more fascinating character than he's given credit for.
Thank you. He would also be in my X-Force, just so you know.
Of course, yeah. I can't imagine your X-Force not including Cable for sure.
Yes. Well, who is yours? I'm curious.
My number 3 is probably the X-Man outside of Cyclops I absolutely identify with the most. I love his working man's attitude to both his powers and his station in the X-Universe. My number 3 is Jamie Madrox, the Multiple Man.
Oh, very good. Interesting choice.
Yeah, I love his character. Again, something that's happened throughout the years. He's grown from this weirdly secluded, couldn't control his multiplication powers, lived on a farm with his dead parents because he literally didn't know there was anything else out there in the world, to the leader head of X Factor investigations, the somewhat capable detective with a cast of characters and friends. Basically, a lot of my love for Multiple Man comes from the Madrox and X Factor series and miniseries. But I find his character fascinating. And like I say, I really relate to him as kind of almost an everyday schlub forced into a fantastic situation and being like, okay, well, this is something I'm going to have to deal with whether I like it or not, so I might as well just do the best I can. And honestly, I love his fashion sense. That green shirt with the little yellow bars and the trench coat, it's just a cool look. I like it. It's understated. It's simple. It's not a costume. It's just something he chooses to wear, and I think it's a really great look. It's really, like I say, going back to he's the ex-everyman. He's the ex-guy. You know, he's the X-Man you can legitimately go out and have a beer with and not worry about the Juggernaut tapping you on the shoulder and being like, ha-ha!
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love Jamie Madrox. If I can't be Cyclops, I would prefer to be Jamie Madrox.
Very nice. And actually, surprisingly, very, very similar to how I view my number 2. This is the person that I would say I most relate to in the X-Men universe. Someone that him and my number 1 are basically tied for so many reasons, but my number 2 is someone that I relate to the most of the X-Men universe. I would say, as far as fashion sense, most similar to, and someone that I just find his character, if I was in the X-Men universe, I'd either be best friends with him or would be very similar to him. My number 2 is Kid Omega.
You know, now that you say that, I totally, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, he is someone that, in a school amongst mutants and freaks, he is too he started off his arc as too normal and too weird to fit in with anyone there. Someone who, like you said, he's not by any means, he doesn't go out there and try to save the world. He's kind of, forced into the situation in a lot of ways because he's a mutant, so he's going to the school. That's basically how he comes up. He's like, okay, it's there. And he's someone who is enforced with drugs, and also my favorite new X-Men story arc, his overtaking of the school, which basically, after doing, I can't remember the name of the drug.
Kick.
Yes, which basically seems to be the mutant equivalent of a weird acid PCP mix.
Yeah, and it's got some speed in it too, because it accentuates your mutant powers, like kicks them into overdrive, but it also does cause the hallucinations and some definite social problems. I love this choice because he started out as a villain. Yeah. He was, the assault on Xavier's, I think is what it was called.
Yeah, I believe it's something like that.
He was the antagonist of that story, and then Jason Aaron brought him back for Wolverine and the X-Men and turned him more into the counterculture, I dislike this because it's popular guy.
Exactly. I mean, there are so many shots in Wolverine and the X-Men. I mean, Wolverine and the X-Men really could have been Wolverine and Kid Omega for the first 15 or so issues for the most part.
Absolutely.
There are so many great shots in that series of just, Wolverine teaching and cutting to Kid Omega, who's asking a question while wearing a Magneto with right shirt.
Yeah, the best cover that series ever had was him sitting in the bathroom with the spray paint can, and on the wall it says, "Hey, remember when Wolverine was cool? Me neither."
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And like you said, one of the few X-Men, he doesn't wear a costume. He wears basically his fashion. He wears him. He's someone that, and then goes to an extreme length of being him, even in his powers. I mean, seeing Psylocke being able to, energy manipulate a sword, he's like, that's cool, and makes a shotgun.
Yeah, exactly.
His name's Kid Omega for a reason. He's someone extremely powerful. Someone who, there's a reason why in future tales he's a holder of a Phoenix Force. Right.
He's the first non-Gray who has the capability of manipulating and possessing the Phoenix Force without it, corrupting or destroying him.
Yes, exactly. He is someone that, almost like you said, very similar to me in the fact that he's not the kid that will go out and do all stuff. He's a kid you'll see at a concert. He's a kid that the little punk kid in the corner, basically.
Right. And I really loved his relationship with Edie as well.
Yes.
Because she was the really repressed. It was kind of the replay of the Rain Sinclair from New Mutants time of, I grew up from a religiously fundamental household. Mutations were evil. I'm a mutant. Therefore, I am bad.
Yeah.
And he kind of came to her and was like, no.
Yeah.
You can make your own way. I did.
Oh, yeah.
And their relationship was always, sweet and touching and very high school kiddish in a way that I thought was really, truly reflected real life.
Oh, and not to mention that, I can't remember what issue it was, but that all-new X-Men issue where it's Jean Grey, I think it's a Valentine's Day issue or something.
Yes.
It's Jean Grey, all these people her hearing like all these horrible things she's done, and her just going out, basically sitting in that park with Kid Omega and talking and having semi-romantic stuff. It's like, such a true to both of those characters of her being like, I don't want this, and him being like, well, you shouldn't do it.
And then also, her rejecting him and being like, okay, I must have her.
Yeah, exactly.
Not because he loves her or because he thinks that they're a good match, because he wants to say he fucked Jean Grey.
Yep, exactly. He wants to be like, he just wants to be the a-hole that did everything first, and I just love that character. And his relationship with everyone, how he brings out the worst and best, but at the end of the day, he will help save the day. He has chosen many times to go the side of good now instead of evil, even though he still kind of wants to go towards the Hellfire Club, go towards that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, he won't.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that is lovely, sir. My number 2 couldn't be further away from your number 2. I would say my number 2 is probably the quintessential X-Man. Possibly, if we were doing best of and not favorites of, I think he would have to be my number 1 as far as a best X-Man, because I think he absolutely encapsulates what the X-Men are, both visually and as a character. My number 2 is Nightcrawler.
Oh, wow. That's a very good choice. If my brother made a list of either, that would be number 1. I guarantee it.
Well, like I say, he's stunningly visual. He was the first X-Man to not look human, and nor can he look human. And in fact, one of his first pieces of dialogue, something that has been called back to on several occasions to very touching effect, was, "Can you help me be normal?" And of course, Professor Xavier, in one of his rare moments of honesty, was basically like, "No, that's not possible. But you're not bad or inherently evil either. You're okay. Being who you are is okay." And again, that was a plot point played into when he originally had his image inducer, and then Wolverine was basically like, "What the fuck are you walking around with that for? Just be yourself. You're fine." The fact that also they bring in his religion, his Catholicism. I'm an atheist, but I understand the power that and strength that religion can bring to a person, and that it's something that he holds so dear to himself, and it sets him apart as a character. And it also creates the beautiful dichotomy of someone who looks like a demon but has the faith of an angel. Also, the fact that once he did embrace who he looked like, he much like Beast, started acting more like who he wanted to be. He started, acting the Errol Flynn type. He wanted to be the 40s swashbuckler character. So he was like, you know what? That's who I want to be. That's what I'm going to aspire to be. I'm going to learn how to use 3 swords because I've got a fucking awesome tail, and go out there and get in the danger room and pretend I'm a pirate. That's fucking great. Yeah. He, like I said before, he encapsulates everything good about the X-Men. Their inclusion, their personality, the visual design of those characters. He is the quintessential X-Man.
No, that is a great pick, honestly. I can't disagree or agree anymore. We'll see. My number 1, like I said, it was a hard choice for me. Very, very hard choice, because number 2, honestly, as far as relatable and all that stuff, like I said, Kid Omega. But number 1, just for sentimental reasons, has to go to the person that got me to pick up the first comic book I ever bought. Got me to go to the comic store. My number 1 is Apocalypse.
I should have known.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Yeah. Like I said, he was the first person that I was so visually striking to me that I had to go to the comic store and buy a comic from. He was the first person that in a world. Like I said, we've said in both the powerful mutants of these big bruising characters, he somehow scares the crap out of all of them.
Right.
He is, okay, when it comes to comic books, movies, even wrestling, there's this problem where they always try to introduce this unstoppable, unbeatable force, and they try to shove it down your throat like, oh, this is unbeatable, this is unstoppable, no one can stop him. But then when someone like Apocalypse comes around, and it actually seems like Apocalypse or Thanos or Darkseid that seems legitimately unstoppable, it sticks out. Because you see him and you're like you said, almost like when Sinister shows up, he's normally connected to Apocalypse, but that's half the reason why Sinister, you see him like, oh no, what's going on? But when Apocalypse shows up, you're like, oh crap, good or bad, I'm in for a long X-Men story where bad stuff's going to happen.
Right, and he was the centerpiece of both of our favorite X crossovers ever. I mean, the Age of Apocalypse is called that for a reason.
And he is someone with such an interesting view where he's not so much of X-Men as, either you're for mutants or you're against mutants or you're this, you're that, You're either Trask or you're Magneto, or you're kind of, or somewhere in between. He's someone, he doesn't care if you're a mutant. He doesn't care if you're this or that. He cares about survival of the fittest. Hey, if you're a human that can survive amongst all the mutants and you can be the best, better than all of them, then you're fine with me, basically. But if you're weak, you're gonna die.
Right.
That's basically his philosophy and everything in a nutshell. And someone that, like I said, he. Like the Thanos level of, he may not win, but if he's involved, no one really wins. Mm-hmm. And someone that, once again, has struck a chord, and they're the reason why Age of Apocalypse is the next film. They're the reason why he has always kind of come back in some form or fashion, or always been mentioned. Whether even like Genesis, his kind of, not current incarnation, but someone who, a clone or self-life model kind of him. He was almost on the list too, but I feel like Genesis and Hope have this weird thing with me where I think they're interesting characters. They haven't had a good enough story yet for me to justify loving them.
I can understand that, and I can even agree with that.
But Apocalypse, they're the reason why Genesis' character, why his main gimmick so far is everyone, of him being so afraid of who he could be, because it's one thing knowing, you could be this bad person. Genesis knows that he could be the worst person. Right. And that's why Apocalypse is my favorite. Because he's the worst person there is in the X-Men universe, and someone who, like you said, if Sinister is like neutral evil, then Apocalypse doesn't even...
he's chaotic evil.
Yeah, it's like he doesn't even know... He may not even know what evil necessarily is, because he just cares about... Once again, it may be the old cliche if he just wants to rule the world or watch it burn, but he does it in such a way that, like I said, nobody really wins. Even when he wins, he doesn't win.
Right. Wow. Could not be more diametrically opposed with my number one. If yours is chaotic evil, mine is lawful good. And if Nightcrawler is the heart and soul of the X-Men, then Cyclops is the brain.
Yeah.
Cyclops is my favorite X-Man. I've talked about this for, any podcast we get to talking about the X-Men, I feel like I have to kind of define why Cyclops is my favorite character. Visually, I think his optic blasts are awesome. It's a power that I would love to have, even if I had to take the brain damage along with it. That meant that I couldn't control them. I love his origin story, the idea that he's an orphan. He originally ran with the bad crowd. He got hooked up with Diamond Jack before he was saved by Professor Xavier. He was groomed since he was 16 to be the best superhero on Earth. He's all about the rules and regulations. He's kind of a wet blanket. He's kind of a nerd. He's the guy that gets shit done even if you're going to make fun of him for doing it. He's the X-Men's dad.
Yeah.
And he can't live without the team, and the team really, in the end, can't live without him. And yeah, I've always had an affinity for characters whose eyes were blocked off in some way. I got glasses when I was in third grade, and for whatever reason, that left a pretty indelible mark on me. So any character with any kind of visor or cool sunglasses or goggles is one that I'm going to gravitate towards. I always loved Geordi LaForge on Star Trek The Next Generation, and I think the kick-ass design of the visor is what initially led me to loving Cyclops so much. But there were also, very early on in my reading, there were two stories that I managed to catch that really, really made me fall in love with Cyclops as a character. And I've mentioned them both before. One of them on this podcast, X-Men number 23, where the new Dark Riders and Sinister both come to test Scott whilst he's spending time with his grandparents in Anchorage. And once again, by himself, without even his visor to help him control his powers and abilities, he still manages to fend off an entire team of Dark Riders and hold his own, and also have the weird, crazy soap opera emotional problems that he has of, Betsy's hitting on me, but I love Jean. Don't I? Question mark. The overwrought narration of Fabian Nicieza and Scott Lobdell during that time really connected with me again as a maturing prepubescent teenager with parent issues. And then also around the same time, X-Men Classics, I want to say it was 73 through 75. It could have been 71 through 73, reprinting issues 173 through 175 of Uncanny X-Men, which is where the Chris Claremont's Paul Smith arc, where Mastermind manipulates the team into thinking that Dark Phoenix is back, and that, in fact, Cyclops is Dark Phoenix. And he, especially in issue 175, my single favorite comic, which we talked about way back on our first podcast, where Cyclops single-handedly defeats the entire X-Men team because he's just that amazing.
No, I do like how opposite you went from Apocalypse. I just realized you could argue Cyclops kind of is Apocalypse's worst foe because everyone bred to kill him basically comes from Cyclops.
That's true too. Yeah, Sinister uses the Summers DNA in conjunctions with the Grey DNA in order to try to create the weapon that kills Apocalypse. Cyclops is really contingent to everyone's plans to try to stop Apocalypse. He's a very important, necessary character to the X-Men continuity in the X-Men universe, and also just he's cool because he's square.
Yeah, and even in his slight villainous turn in AVX afterwards, he was still trying to do good and do what he could do. And I do want to point out that was, I think, Kid Omega's second coolest shirt was the Cyclops was right shirt.
I actually own a Cyclops. I own 2 Cyclops was right t-shirts. I thought I lost it at one point, so I bought another. So I actually have 2 red Cyclops was right t-shirts I bought from my local LCS, and I wear them to almost every Comic-Con I go to because I absolutely agree. Cyclops is on the right side of AVX. Captain America was wrong. He shouldn't have forced their hand like that. Yeah. And, also, Cyclops didn't kill Professor Xavier. No. That was some retarded shit. The Phoenix killed Professor Xavier. Brian Bendis killed Professor Xavier. Cyclops did not kill Professor Xavier.
I also agree. They point that out actually because, like I said, I've been doing a big reread for this and reading some of my characters and sort of love. And Cable Lake Force, they bring up when Colossus turns himself in, and he's like Wolverine's talking to him and basically saying, "Hey, you don't have to turn yourself in for this. You don't need to go to jail. You were possessed by the Phoenix Force. The Phoenix Force killed those people. You did not." Colossus basically, I have to atone. I have to do this. And no, I agree. It's not that. Even afterwards, though, when Cyclops kind of made his own team. Really quick, what's your favorite version of Cyclops' visor? While we're on subject, before I forget.
Well, it may just be because of who was drawing it. I have a tremendous affinity for Walt Simonson art, and I love the big, bulky fire hydrant-esque visor that he wore during the Simonson issues of X Factor. That is my favorite Cyclops costume in general. Just the big white X on the blue unitard with the skull cap and the big-ass giant yellow visor. Quick anecdote. Yeah. Oh, God, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name, but the guy that plays Cyclops in X-Men.
I can't remember his name. It's
somebody's screaming in their earbuds right now, but I'm James Marsden. Sorry. He was wondering why he had to wear such a large visor for the first film, and of course they did shrink it significantly for the second film. But he was uncomfortable in the large visor, and how they sold it to him to wear the visor was, think of it as a fire hydrant containing all of the power behind your eyes. It's necessary to have that much equipment holding the ruby quartz in place, or even the ruby quartz probably couldn't stop it. And I don't know, I think it's a great visual to have that big, bulky ass. That is what I would wear if I had to wear a visor. It'd be just this big thing that took up a third of my face because it looks awesome.
Very nice. I was just wondering, because, he's someone that, it's a small detail that they constantly change.
I really loved Frank Quietly's design because he really stuck to the Slim Summers ideal. He gave Cyclops much more of a thin swimmer's body, and then to go along with that and the lengthening of his face, they also gave him the very, very thin visor that gave him almost his entire face range of emotion. That also worked really well. It was a good visual, but it was not my favorite. My favorite's always been the giant bulky one.
I did love your 2 favorites you go to, though, are the complete opposites.
Oh yeah, they're completely diametrically opposed to each other, but they're also, again, it's the artistic feel of those books. And me, I am completely in the tank for Walt Simonson, so
I understand.
That really helps. I wanted to just do it real quick. I'm not going to go into reasons why, but I have a list almost as long as my top 10 of runners-up who almost made the list, and I was hoping I could just name drop these.
Yeah, because I actually have the same.
All right, you go first. You've been going first on this one. So.
Well, I mentioned them earlier. Genesis and Hope were on there. I said why. Blink was almost on there. Scarlet Witch, Psylocke, Storm, Emma Frost. All enough just because visually, I've always liked him. Omega Red. I always loved his visuals.
He's got an amazing visual.
Yes. Colossus. And just because of the possibility of his stories, I don't think he ever lived to. But Legion, I always like the idea of Legion.
I can definitely get behind that.
But yeah, that would be my short list.
Okay, my runners up, Havoc. You know, honestly, you know, I too used to think of him as the poor man Cyclops, and he's really grown out of his brother's shadow, but not enough to make him someone I'd want to put on my list. Also, Uncanny Avengers is terrible. Cannonball, great visual, great character, love him. He's probably number 11, honestly. Same thing with Boom Boom from X-Force. I think she's an amazing, fun visual character. Yeah. Gambit is the reason I started reading X-Men comics. Colossus is one of the best visuals in comics, period. He was very, very close to being on the list as well. Strong Guy, because his character is amazing, especially during the aforementioned X-Factor Peter David issues. Same thing with Wolfsbane, very visual and a lot of fun in those comics. Also Blink, for obvious reasons. Archangel, for a number of the reasons that you mentioned. Magic, because I've recently kind of binge-read a lot of New Mutants, and I totally get her character now, and she's great. Going back to my number 10, M, Chamber, and Sync, and Jubilee from Generation X are all on my, I wish I could put the members of Generation X in number 10.
X-Statics were almost all on my list. I almost forgot about that.
Nice. X-Man made my runners-up because, again, a lot of the reasons you said, and then, of course, Blindfold, who was ultimately knocked off by Armor.
I like that our lists were almost very similar and ended up being very different.
Yeah. we had a lot of cross-pollination in our, these are good characters, but if this is a favorites list, I've got to go with my favorite here because X.
Yes.
Well, that was not a pun.
We're waiting for that. Well, do you want to go ahead and do the top 5 stories as well?
Yeah. And I'm going to, since you started characters, I'll start top 5 stories / runs. My number 5, I've been talking all over this podcast, is the Lav Del Bacallo Generation X run.
I suspected that would be on there.
Yeah. It's, again, it was so important, especially the first issue, was just so important to me formatively as a comics fan and as specifically a comics fan coming into his teenage years with these characters who were teenage characters. It very much would be the same way for someone, 10, 15 years older than me encountering New Mutants when they were 11, 12, 13 years old. So, yeah, that run is ingrained in my DNA.
Very nice. Well, I think our list will show the age difference.
Yeah.
And also, you're going to hate my number 5. Mostly because I put my number 5 because we've talked about it. It is pure balls out fun. And it was something, like I said, that when I was first getting into comics was often on shelves and stuff. My number 5 is Ultimate X-Men, Mark Millar.
I can't hate that. I'm actually totally fine with that. It didn't make my list. And when it was first coming out, those comics were amazing.
Like I said, I've recently been rereading them, and they're just balls out fun. And it's Millar what he does best, which is stupid action. But he does when he's trying to do it well. He can do stupid action really well.
He can. I feel those comics haven't aged well, but they are very much of their time. And if you're reading them at the time, those are some amazing X-Men comics.
Yeah, there's just some really fun moments to be had, and plus they were comics that did lay the foundation for a lot of the films and animation that we got from X-Men for a while after that.
Absolutely.
So that would be my number 5.
I cannot fault your number 5. Okay. In fact, if we'd gone to 10, that might have been my 9th or 10th pick because it is. But I would have gone from Millar through Brian Vaughan because I feel like the series actually maintains some level of quality up until the end of Brian Vaughan's run.
I will completely agree with that. In fact, I was debating on I put Millar just because it was a simpler, volumes 1 through whatever. It would not you don't have to go volumes 1 through 20 or whatever it was.
Right. My number 4 is actually, again, going to show my age, and I mentioned before that this was something I've only recently discovered, but having discovered it, I totally get what the hype was about, and I totally dig it. The Claremont Davis Excalibur run.
Yes, my brother's actually, because he was a huge Nightcrawler fan, read a ton of Excalibur, and he hadn't read a ton of comics, but he just went through it. I don't want to say all of Excalibur, but a ton of it, and wouldn't stop raving.
Well, the first 24 issues or so, up through the end of the Cross-Time Caper, is goofy, reality-hopping, Claremont being, and I'm going to put this in quotes, funny X-Men stories. He really wanted to do a more lighthearted book, and unfortunately, Chris Claremont has a very strange sense of humor, so his idea of lighthearted still involves these creatures called the werewolves killing people and stealing their bodies, and then the humor comes from them being weird inside these human husks that they've, killed the owner of, and then also the crazy time reality dimension hopping where we meet Nazi German versions of the Excalibur team, including a ghost Kitty Pryde, because Kitty Pryde is Jewish. And come on, yay, fun, yay, lighthearted. So yeah, it's a weird dichotomy, but I love it because it is genuinely Claremont trying to write outside of his normal style. The Alan Davis art is, of course, Davis was at the top of his game in the 1980s. It's a gorgeous looking book, and its influence is still shown on a lot of those characters today. You wouldn't have Kitty Pryde where she is. You wouldn't have Rachel Summers where she is. You definitely wouldn't have Nightcrawler where he is as a character without the characterization and build-up and stories done within the Claremont Davis Excalibur run. So as much as I was kind of poking fun at it a second ago, I really think it was a great run and truly influential to the X-Men universe.
Very true, very true. Especially Nightcrawler. Without Claremont, for obvious reasons, Nightcrawler wouldn't be where he was, but those are, like, when you think of Nightcrawler stories, they're almost all, the essential ones go back to him.
Absolutely.
My number 4 is actually a more recent one, but it's one that I keep going back to, because I remember it takes a south turn, but the first of it is so fun. Number 4 is Wolverine and the X-Men with Jason Aaron.
I can agree with that as well.
Yeah, like you said, there was a long period of time, and even to this day, where X-Men comics were very, very serious. And they've always kind of tended toward that, but very serious, very kind of down, very trodden, very like, Wolverine X-Men came along, and it was just a fun shot in the heart for X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was just Wolverine teaching with students like Kid Omega and Armor and all these other people, while you had stuff like the Dark Angel saga going on, which would kind of cross over in these hilarious, weird ways. And it was handled very well, and then AVX kind of forced its hand to go down a little bit, because all of a sudden they had to go elsewhere. But those, especially the first 3 volumes, I believe, with the issues 1 through 12?
About 1 through 12, yeah.
Those are some of the funnest X-Men books, I think, ever, and they're just so character-oriented and so fun, and they do such just crazy. I mean, the entire story arc of basically Wolverine to get money for the school, going with Kid Omega and a few other students to a casino in a
intergalactic casino.
Intergalactic casino to basically do fix a card game and escape.
Yeah. Those, and then also I remember at the same time Kitty was quote unquote pregnant, and then turned out to be brood embryos, and that was horrifying and hilarious in equal measure.
Yeah, and you had these straight up beasts and them going inside and a little bitty. Yeah, it's just crazy fun X-Men at its the crazy side of X-Men, much like the Excalibur, just crazy weird out there, but oddly fun
and necessary.
Yes,
because, like
very.
you said, the title, the entire line can lean towards the too serious way too frequently and easily, and you really need books like Wolverine and the X-Men or Excalibur to break it up and give a different tone to the line.
Yeah, and I'd say one of the saddest moments I never thought of, it's an old comic, I'm going to spoil, but the semi-death of Brood.
Yeah.
Genuinely, like, heart-wrenching, heartbreaking. Like, it's a character you should not feel sad for, a Brood. And somehow Jason Aaron pulled it off where you're just, like, heartbroken when it happens.
Right, absolutely.
And even more heartbroken when he comes back, but he's turned into just reverted to a normal Brood.
Right. Yeah, that was really astonishing what he was able to do with characters like Brew and Edie and, again, Kid Omega.
Yeah.
My number 3, kind of in that same vein, Morrison et al. On New X-Men. From E is for Extinction through Here Comes Tomorrow, you had nothing but quality X-Men stories that did new, fascinating, and exciting things with the title and the series. Everything about that run, I can't say it was perfect because, man, Igor Korgi was on some really tight deadlines and turned in some supremely ugly artwork on occasion, but at least you know that the defense was he drew at least one of those issues in a week.
Yeah.
So you got to cut the guy some slack.
Oh, yeah.
But the stories that Morrison was telling and the take he had on the X-Men was such a breath of fresh air and so honestly new. And, to coin a phrase, it was all new and all different. It was something we hadn't seen before as X-fans, and quite frankly, really haven't seen since. The closest we've probably come is Jason Aaron's Wolverine in the X-Men, but even he can't mix the serious and the sublimely silly the way Morrison was able to.
Oh, no. No, I completely agree. That's you. I won't spoil it, but you may see that on my list. But yeah, that run is so superb. Going from the extreme serious to the extremely funny. I mean, Beast, especially in that series, balances that tightrope. Incredible.
Yeah, and then also some very important Cyclops character development, especially his relationship with Emma, all took place in that. So, of course, that run's going to have a high place in my heart.
We've talked a lot about it. That run is like the best and worst thing that ever happened to Cyclops.
Yes.
Because that's where other people started getting the idea that he was just a soldier.
Yeah, well, Morrison's idea was he's been training to be a superhero since he was 16. And people, even people as great as Joss Whedon misinterpreted that to he had been training to be a soldier since he was 16. And they took that the entirely wrong
and
direction off of that.
Sally just trickled down because you had people like Whedon and Millar and all these people that were like, oh, he's doing this, and so he's a soldier, and they can write good, decent characters, but then you had lesser writers writing lesser versions of a lesser version of a character, and it just kept getting more and more and more and more trickle down, and even this day, like I said, he hadn't quite got back to what he should be.
Right. Bendis has done some Herculean effort to rebuild Cyclops' character. Whether or not you like his X-Men comics, he has done some Herculean work trying to redeem Cyclops and make Cyclops a viable character again.
Oh, yeah. And I think he's much closer to who he should be. I mean, much closer and a much more enjoyable character than that sad, overworked soldier he became. I mean, crap, he basically became a sadder version of Cable for a while somehow.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can't think of a clever segue for this one. Number 3, I think has the best arc in the past decade in it. Number 3 is Uncanny X-Force, Rick Remender. And,
I knew that was going to be on your list, yes, sir.
There are Apocalypse Solution's great. And every Apocalypse Solution, Death Clock Nation, and then Dark Angel. Those 3 specifically, and then the final arc. There is one bad arc I won't talk about. Where it wasn't even that bad an arc. He tried.
Hassan Ribic was not the correct artist for that, and again, that was an arc that you really needed to be pretty familiar with Claremont Davis Excalibur to understand the meat of. And
like you said, someone like you would normally have loved that, but it was such a bad pairing for the art. That is the one comic I can think of that's the perfect example of you have to have an artist and a writer who fit together, or else you end up with that, because that became this weird thing of, is this a dream sequence? Is this happening? Is this not happening? Is this real? Is it not real? But anyway, to the good, I won't focus on the bad of that. The good, Apocalypse Solution is such a fun, interesting take on the typical Apocalypse 4 Horsemen storyline, and ending up with it being a genetically modified little kid clone, life model, decoy, weird thing, and having Deadpool have to possibly pull a trigger and having the Merc with the mouth for a second get this really emotional moment. And not only having Deadpool be probably the best written character he has been ever.
I was going to say, especially in the first issue, but overall throughout the story, that is the best Deadpool we have seen since Joe Kelly and Ed McGuinness.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great Deadpool. Like I said, making Angel and Psylocke such integral characters, and giving these characters who've been made fun of a lot of, much like a lot of 90s characters, for not having a lot of real story, giving them such an emotional and heartbreaking story together. And the Dark Angel saga just cementing this tragic story in both of their bones.
Absolutely.
And the final arc, like I said, we mentioned earlier, but Sabretooth and Wolverine's son and all these people coming together to basically try to kill Wolverine, and almost very, very close to succeeding, and it just being a really fun, including also having Omegas in it, and kind of Rick Remender is someone that you can tell, almost like we were just talking, loves a lot of the X-Men lore, loves a lot of the X-Men characters, and writes an incredible X-book. Sadly, that didn't everyone's looking forward to Uncanny Avengers because of that, and it didn't translate somehow.
Right. I think I kind of feel like the Uncanny Avengers team may have been forced on him, and he did the best he could with what he had, because you can tell the Uncanny X-Force team was a lot more organic as to the stories he wanted to tell. But I really feel like Captain America specifically, and probably, well, no, because it feels like the Wasp was kind of there to be a legitimate love interest for Havoc, who I know he did want on the team.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Rogue's powers made sense, but he really didn't understand the character. Same with Scarlet Witch. I really think that Captain America was completely superfluous to that team. You needed Thor because you needed the setup from before time with Yarnborn for the later stories. But other than that, he really didn't need to be there. And dude writes a good Wolverine, but Wolverine kind of got lost in the shuffle. So yeah, Uncanny Avengers is a mess of a book. The end. Was there anything else you wanted to say about Uncanny X-Force?
If you wanted to see the potential Uncanny Avengers reached, read Uncanny X-Force.
Yes.
That's what you could have had and what you did have, but somehow it's just a weird case where, the Uncanny X-Force fits him perfectly. I remember we were reading that when it came out, and up until that one weird arc, it was the Marvel book to read. It was like, especially during Dark Angel Saga, that was, you were talking about like 10 out of 10 comics, that was like almost 10 out of 10 comics that just like every month for a solid 5-6 months.
Yeah, you may or may not remember this, but for a while there, that was the Marvel book I was reading. You said it was the Marvel book to read.
That's
that was literally the only Marvel book I was reading at that time. I dropped my Marvel pool down to Uncanny X-Force.
That's right. Yeah, it was the best for a long time. That was the only book they were offering, in both of our opinions. That and Wolverine X was around the same time too.
Yeah, but at that point they were hip deep in AVX, and I was done with that. I dropped it.
But Uncanny X-Force, unbelievable. Go on.
Yes, number 2, very much nostalgia pick for me. In fact, my first 2 are probably going to be very much nostalgia picks. But it's one that we've talked about over and over again. It's the Lobdell Madureira Uncanny X-Men run, basically because Age of Apocalypse, the end.
Yep.
I really don't know how much more to say of it other than you and I both adore Age of Apocalypse, and that is my number 2 pick for best X-Men run. The end.
Yeah. These next 2 are going to go fast. My number 2 is Morrison's New X-Men. You said a lot of it earlier. It was a story arc that really just kind of redefined the X-Men and put them in new situations and gave them just very interesting new things to deal with, stuff they hadn't dealt with before. I had mentioned earlier specifically the arc that I love with Kid Omega, but because it introduced this whole mutant underground culture, the fashion culture, stuff you don't really think about, stuff Morrison was trying to focus on, was not just them having powers, but what would the culture be around it? What would like this underground culture rising up have? What would be their rock and roll? What would be their punk? What would be their rap? What would be their stuff? And it was just this world building that you didn't realize was missing from the X-Men world until Morrison started doing it.
Right, absolutely.
And that, you said everything, every other reason.
Okay, so I guess that brings us to our number 1 picks. Yeah. And I think my number 1's going to seem kind of out of left field, but again, it's a super nostalgia pick for me. And that is the very short run that Chris Claremont and Paul Smith did on Uncanny X-Men, which of course includes those few issues that I mentioned earlier, 173 to 175, where Cyclops and the supposed return of Dark Phoenix because of the manipulations of Mastermind. Also, there's other stuff that happens in there. Wolverine's wedding gets called off with Mariko Ishida because she's being manipulated by Mastermind. He's wearing the brown and gold costume at that point. Rogue gets introduced. She becomes a fully functioning member of the team, and Wolverine nearly sacrifices his life to save her at one point, actually. She gets brutally injured in a way that even she can't recover from, so he kisses her so that she can absorb his healing factor. There's also a really gorgeous, completely silent, no dialogue, which is rare for Claremont, fight between Wolverine and the Silver Samurai that goes on for like 3 or 4 pages of just gorgeously staged Paul Smith art, completely selling you on, because the great thing about comics and the worst thing about comics is they can be static images, and it takes a real artist to sell a fight in a static panel to panel and flow, and that fight flows so beautifully from one image to the next that Claremont didn't even put any dialogue in. And I think that's a true testament to Paul Smith's skills as an artist. So yeah, it may have been brief. It may not be as well known or well adored as the Claremont Byrne pairing or the Claremont. Oh God, blanking on his name. You did Legion of Superheroes. Cockrum, Dave Cockrum. Not nearly as famous as Claremont Cockrum, not nearly as well beloved as Claremont Byrne. But for me, the highest the X-Men have ever attained was Claremont Smith, Paul Smith.
Very, very, very nice and lovely sentiment. And very true. Mine, I cheated a little bit because you narrowed it down. I didn't. I just put Age of Apocalypse. We talk about it all the time. It's such a fun, crazy crossover. It's hard to narrow down because it crossed over in every book for such a long period. And it has so many tie-ins, even from the main universe and main everything, and then came back, and even to this day, it's coming back again. It's just a fixture, and almost like we mentioned last podcast, how Nightfall and No Man's Land really kind of took root with current Batman creators, and kind of is the foundation of Batman today. You could say Age of Apocalypse is one of the stories that really is kind of what holds the foundation down in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. I think that argument is definitely something that could be made. I've said my piece on Age of Apocalypse before, and all I can do is agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about it. The X-Men's, once again, because they have had so many books for such a long time, I know that a lot of people listening that are going to say we missed so many stories, because we did. Mm-hmm. But you could have a top 200 list of X-Men stories and not have anything bad on it, because there have been more than 12 different titles on the stands from X-Men almost for 20 years straight, off and on.
Right.
And it's hard to narrow down that much.
And it's hard to even say, how much X-Men have you read? Because I've read easily, 4,000 single issues of X-Men. I can't remember all of those, and there's 4,000 more out there that I haven't read.
Yeah, so. Well, X-Men is such a big series and such a big franchise. Like I said, there's 4,000 you've read. I've read near as much, but there are entire story arcs I've read that you haven't.
Right.
Just because of the nature of the beast.
Mm-hmm. And I've read so much more of the classic stuff than you have.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, like, as someone who hasn't read, I've read a ton of X-Men, but hasn't read near as much. It's just one of those few franchises where, like, if you're a huge Batman fan, you can have hit all the basic ones, all the big ones, and have gotten most of them done. If you're a big X-Men fan, there are, like, entire X-Men, X-Force, different X-teams that you may not have ever even touched because, hey, who cared about that one?
Right, exactly.
But someone...
And more power to you for feeling that way. There's everybody... The great thing about the X-Men universe is there's literally something for everybody.
Yes, I do want to say there were a few that almost made my list, like we did last one. Exiles was so close to making it. Specifically the Judd Winnick stuff.
Yes, of course.
Because I love Winnick, and when he's doing that was him at. It's weird he has such a short career in he's still going, but such a short big name. That was one of those 4 period where it was just really really fun and good. Of course, Days of Future Past, because that is such a fun story. Something I know we're both. I'm surprised it went on either list. The Dark Phoenix.
Right. I think it's not on our list because it's just kind of general knowledge that is amazing and perfect, and everything about it is great.
It's almost like when we did the top best list. I put them on my list, you didn't, but it's like having Batman and Superman as best heroes. It's kind of this understanding story of, they're probably there. They're probably number 1 or 2. And Dark Phoenix is... I'm surprised we haven't had a good version of it yet on film. I know we had an attempt at it. And I'm guessing that'll happen very soon. Whoever takes over after Age of Apocalypse, since we're hitting all these major stories, I'm almost sure that's what's coming.
That would make sense, yeah.
Especially since we're getting Jean Grey in this one. But yeah, there's so many next stories and a ton. One recent one that I'm still shocked is actually good. Death of Wolverine
was astonishingly solid. Yeah.
Yeah, that
way better than it had any right to be.
Exactly. I recently actually finished that, and I was shocked that it was actually good, because that is something that should have just been, coming out for money, just thrown out there, and somehow it wraps up his story, going back and forth from all of his origin to his depth and involving characters that would be would be involved. Like you said, if he originally wanted Sabretooth, which does make a little bit better sense, I think. A little biased, but still, that's a story that's good. I mentioned some more recent ones on mine. Are there any recent X-Men stories that you would really recommend?
The big one for me that we really haven't touched is Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men.
True. That's actually on my that is on my number 15 basically list. I just trying to say stuff and it wasn't on the track.
That one came very, very close to making my list. Was ultimately knocked off by the Claremont Davis Excalibur stuff, but was note perfect. Claremont's left such a indelible mark on the franchise that everybody after him did what they could, and really the mirror of Claremont really shined heavily over a lot of runs. And Whedon was the first person I feel like who took the Claremont influence and did something new and interesting with it, as opposed to just recycling Claremont ideas. So yeah, that's actually probably my number 6. Peter David's X Factor in all its various incarnations would be in a runner-up for me for sure. I think he really knew and loved those characters and wanted to do something Claremont wanted to do with Cyclops and a few of the other X-Men, which was, grow them up. He wanted to ultimately get them to a point where they didn't need to be superheroes anymore, where they didn't need their own title anymore. And I think he did that with his second X-Factor run for the majority of his characters. Of course, Claremont Byrne would be on there. Claremont Cockrum would be on there. I would actually go back far enough to say was it Roy Thomas and Neil Adams? I can't remember for sure who was writing when Neil Adams was drawing. But whoever was drawing when Neil Adams was on Uncanny back prior to Giant Size X-Men number 1, those books were astonishing and really had X-Men going back on the right track in a way that unfortunately the sales just didn't come in time for the industry to understand that the X-Men was a book that could be saved. But yeah, every issue of Neil Adams' X-Men from the 60s were really fantastic. Well worth your time to hunt down if you can ever pick up a X-Men Visionaries or the Essentials that those stories were in.
I haven't read any of those, so I would definitely should pick those up at some point.
You totally should.
I would definitely.
Classic comics are good, dude.
Well, I know. I'm weird on Classic. On Classic, I'm always weird on I'll pick up the most random independent ones and still haven't read the big major ones. I'm bad about that, I won't lie.
Whereas I am on my second read-through of Stan Lee Jack Kirby Fantastic Four.
Oh. That's the sad thing is now, so much Jack Kirby stuff is not like in big reprint stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of sad. Like, it always surprised me that it's hard to find some of the quintessential Kirby stuff in any graphic novel form.
Very true.
Which is very sad.
Anymore. I mean, it's weird. It goes in and out of print in a way that's not easy to keep up with, unfortunately.
Yeah, we may have hit on this before. It has to do with X-Men, but it always amazed me what has a tendency to stick around in print for a long time, or always be there, and what doesn't.
Right. Well, Marvel's also really bad about keeping trades in print because the way their trade program works is vastly different from the way DC's trade program works, and theirs is much more monetary based. Yeah. So they're not willing to grow a collection the way DC is. I mean, the whole reason Watchmen and Dark Knight and all those, and Preacher and all of those others have made the sales that they've had and become the perennials that they have is because they've never been out of print. Yeah. And Marvel is willing to let everything go out of print as long as they made their money off of the book in the first place. Yeah. So, yeah, Marvel's print department or trade department are a bunch of dicks.
Yeah, well, it's crazy. Like, I have it, but a friend of mine wanted to read Schism, which is an X-Men book you would think would be very easy to find. And, no, it's, like, impossible to find anywhere, apparently.
Yeah, and it's also extremely recent.
Yeah, that's not that old. I don't think it's horrible. So I know some people hate that, but,
I'm raising my hand. You can't see it, but I'm raising my hand.
Okay. It has Kid Omega at the beginning. I do like that.
That's true.
It takes some bad turns, though. But, that's an interesting question. Besides Age of Apocalypse, what's your favorite, like, X-Men event?
Okay. I'm sorry, what was the question?
I was saying, besides Age of Apocalypse, what's your favorite X-Men event?
Oh, Mutant Massacre, by far.
Very nice, very nice.
Yeah, it was well done. The art was fantastic. It was basically the first crossover ever done. I really liked the way the teams tied together, and it was also the X-Men at their darkest. You know, that was the issue where Nightcrawler was nearly killed. Kitty was stuck in phase form. Colossus was, I want to say, paralyzed for a bit. There was a bunch of, terrible shit went down. It was a near breaking moment for the X-Men.
Very nice. Yeah,
that they had to overcome.
That's one I've actually read about half of, sadly, because I can't. Once again, I can't find all of it.
Right, and it used to have a really nice trade collection, which is sadly no longer in print.
Yeah, exactly. If anyone from Marvel ever listens, which they may, who knows? But why you do that? Because it's just weird. I can go find pretty much most major DC events from the past 30 years in some format. Not look that hard. Go maybe Barnes and Noble or Hastings.
Right.
Don't even have to go to a comic shop. Where Marvel, it's like. You can't. I didn't like it, but you can't even find AVX if you want to at most places.
That's true. Yeah, it's already kind of fallen off the shelves.
And now, in their defense, they have had 7 or 8 events since then.
Right. True.
But, yeah, it's just weird to me that that's how they work.
Speaking of, the Spider-Verse hardcover just came out, and I think I'm going to have to buy it.
Oh, see, I need to because I actually. Does it include the Edge of Spider-Verse stuff?
It does not include Edge of Spider-Verse, but it includes everything else. It's got the Scarlet Spiders miniseries, the first 4 issues of Spider-Woman, the 2 Spider-Verse one-shots that came out after. Edge of Spider-Verse, unfortunately, is being treated as its own story and has gotten its own trade paperback collection, but the very nice $75 hardcover of Spider-Verse does have the entire Spider-Verse story.
That's really odd that Marvel once again wouldn't just be like, it's $15 more and has the entire thing.
Yeah, you wish.
Yeah.
I wish.
Yeah.
It would be great, but it is what it is, and I am very happy with the product that they did put out. I'm glad they put out a collection of the entire story because I was afraid it was going to be broken into 2 volumes.
Yeah, I will say that it's better than what they normally do. Much better than they normal if I can see each one of those being its own trade.
Yeah.
Especially, which, like I said, I've been trying to buy more. I've been trying my best to buy more Marvel stories I do like, and so I've recently run into that problem where just looking for anything even remotely old is damn near impossible.
Yeah.
I have to get lucky to find comic shops or used places that have, oh crap! Cable X-Force. I was trying to complete my collection on that because that's a story I forgot how much I loved, and even that one was I had to go find volumes 1 and 2. Shouldn't be that hard. Volume 1 and 2 came out about 2 years ago. No, fuck that. It took me forever.
I don't doubt it. It's
got lucky, and that was the
that's
only
just
reason.
how Marvel rolls. I wish there was another way I could say it, but that's really just how Marvel rolls. Dude, have you seen the time? We've recorded for nearly 2 hours.
Yes, I have. This will be a big cast.
Yes, it will. It's pretty exciting though because it means we have a lot to say about our favorite Merry Mutants, the X-Men.
Yes, the X-Stravaganza is sadly the end of the party, but there'll probably be another party for X-Men eventually.
Yeah, I assume so. We should do something fun and cool for the actual Uncanny X-Men number 600 when it comes out in October.
Yes, I do want to say really quick, our friend of the podcast, Nick Mundy, got married and has made headlines all over the place because it was a surprise wedding and The Rock ordained them.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so congratulations, Nick Mundy, on having your best friend marry you to your other best friend.
That is awesome. Congratulations, Nick. I wish I had something to match up with that. I was just going to hype myself. Next weekend is the Dallas Comic-Con. Stan Lee will be there. Nathan Fillion will be there. They just announced Matt Smith, the 11th Doctor, will be there.
Very nice.
And I will be there. Me and my partner Derek Fleece will be selling the first issue of our comic, Legends of Streaming #1, out on Artist Alley, $5 an issue. Derek will be doing sketches on the back of the bag and board. When you buy the book, he'll also have prints and such on display for sale, and I will be there talking. And if you mention the podcast, I will give you a hug, and I'm sure there's some kind of free merch I can scrounge up. Okay. So if you happen to be in Dallas, if you happen to be at the Dallas Comic-Con, come by Artist Alley, look for the D&D Studios banner. We'll be selling our comic, and say you love the podcast. That would be amazing.
Yes, that would be, that'd be awesome. And check out his comic for sure. I've read it. It's very good. It's worth $5. And the sketch on the back he did is awesome, and he did it very quickly.
Yeah, Derek's got some skills, man.
Yeah, he has some awesome prints, too. If you guys are there, go buy the Red Hood and the Outlaws print that he has. It's really cool.
It is pretty badass. It is one of his better sellers, too, I would say.
Yeah, it fills my heart with warmth knowing that, actually. But yeah, I didn't know Matt Smith was going to be there. That's awesome.
Yeah, they literally just announced it this morning. That's so cool. It's a surprise last-minute fill-in guest. I'm super excited about it.
Yes. Oh, plus, this is my own personal when I beg for stuff. If anyone has an extra RTX ticket, email me and you'll be my other best friend for life because I need to get one and I'm fighting for them.
Awesome.
Or if you want to fight to the death for one and want to record it, we can do that too.
That would be amazing.
Yes, and
that would be an excellent special episode.
As long as I don't go to jail till after RTX, I guess I'll be okay.
Totally.
Well, yeah, this has been probably our longest one, and definitely our longest one that has been released.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have the technically glitched shows we do not speak of.
Yeah.
And I guess we should probably just go ahead and do our traditional sign-off stuff. If you want to yell at us for making extremely long episodes about X-Men, or contact Colby to let him know you'll fight him to the death for an RTX ticket,
yes.
You can get a hold of us on Twitter. I am at Voodoo Ben.
I'm at HellhoundF5.
Or you can email us at our email address, blahblahpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that is blahblahpodcast, all one word, @gmail.com. Please send us emails. I love getting emails. You guys have no idea how much fun it is for me to get emails. If you have any questions you want us to do on the show, we will totally try to remember to do them on the show. Apparently, we're really bad at that.
Yeah, but we try.
Yes, we'll put forth sincere effort to read your question on the show. So yeah, find us on Twitter, find us on email. You can download us on iTunes. We're on Podomatic.
Yes.
We're talking about getting a website together, but I'm lazy and still haven't done it yet. And nobody has mentioned any interest in us having a website. So if you want us to have a website, tell us we need a website, and I will make us a website.
Oh, there we go. That's right.
Hooray! So probably not going to record next week because of con schedule. We'll see. So if you don't hear from us next week, we'll be back week after that with more comics and movie nerdery.
Yes, and I'm sure by that point some news will have come out about something and some cool stuff. Oh, really quick.
And we will have opinions.
Yes, we will. I'll save this for the next podcast. I had an idea, but we'll save it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you, the listener, and me, the reporter, will have to live in mystery until the next podcast. It's very exciting.
Yes. Well, goodbye, everyone. Have a good day or night or whenever you're listening to us.
Bye.